This is On Target St. John's, a look at politics, crime, education. What's happening here with the people who know. The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of this station. Now, your On Target St. John's host, Linda Swain.
And good afternoon. Welcome to On Target. I'm Richard Duggan, filling in for Linda Swain. Linda's taking some much-deserved time off this week. On today's episode of On Target, we're going to go inside the wrestling ring. I have two people who know the local pro wrestling scene very, very well on the line. First, I'll introduce Travis Canning. He's the owner of New Evolution Wrestling. Travis, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And also on the line, we have professional wrestler. He is known as the Steel Panther, Cameron Stevens. Cameron, hello.
How's it going, brother?
Excellent, guys. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having us.
All right, so Travis, I'll start off with you, give you a little bit of an introduction. So I guess just to start off, how did you first get involved in the local pro wrestling scene?
Well, when I was a teenager, I actually started going to local wrestling shows. I'm going to say it was about 1999. So I eventually just started staying after shows, helping clean up, helping set up the ring, helping tear it down, and sort of got myself in behind the scenes a little bit. I was almost like a little bit of a gopher, as it were, back in the days of like New Flag Championship Wrestling and the original Cutting Edge Wrestling. And so from there, I guess I just progressed over time and sort of worked my way up into being a promoter. So yeah, that's basically back in the days of like Sailor White. He was running the shows there for the most part. Yeah. Was
it a difficult industry to break into back then?
It was a lot more difficult to break into it back then than it is now. It was almost like a fraternity thing. And not that that's not the case now. It was just extremely difficult. You were weeded out pretty quick back then. Especially if you were an in-ring or a manager or something like that. If you were in a situation where you were on the show, you had to be someone who was really, really reliable and consistent. But it was a lot easier, I think, if you could just maneuver your way and find just any avenue to get inside and try to help out as much as you can, which is what I did because I'm not a wrestler. I never really aspired to be one. I wanted to be a promoter. So I just started doing everything I could possibly do to help out back then.
All right, and I'll come back to that in a second. But Cameron, now I want to go to you. So I'll ask you the same question. How did you get your start in the pro wrestling industry in this province?
Well, in this province, I had originally showed up to what was the Arn Anderson show there, Travis?
It was Summercade 4, June 22nd, 2019.
That, yeah. So I showed up to that show, and I wasn't able to be on the cards there yet. The card was filled up. So I went to, I believe it was Whitburn the next night, and wrestled the Saltwater Savage, Andrew Hawk, and from that point on, it was all history from there.
So how did you get into the industry first off, like when you first started out?
When I first started out, I was actually 15 and attending high school in Alberta. My mother was working as a manager of, I'm trying to remember the name of the store now, can't remember. And one of the guys that was working for her was training with Bruce Hart of the legendary Hart family. And my mom, being my mom, first thing she said was, hey, would he be interested in training my son? He loves wrestling. Because in a lot of ways, wrestling's all I had for years, right? So she talked to Bruce. They arranged the price and everything, and from that point on, I was able to start training. I had my first professional match when I was 17 years old, a little bit less than 5 years ago. It'll be 5 years on the 27th.
What was that? You mentioned Bruce Hart, and for those who don't know, the Hart family is legendary in the pro wrestling business. So what was it like for you to... Was it intimidating for you to go into that family to learn?
At first, it's a little bit of an intimidating thing because you obviously hear all the stories of how brutal the Stampede guys were broken into the industry, and just how hard the training is with them. I can't say that it was as difficult for my generation of guys as it would have been for, say, when Bruce was coming in himself. However, he definitely taught us how to take a good whooping.
And now, Travis, I'll go back to you for a moment, because you said that you never really aspired to be a wrestler. You always were attracted to the promotional side of it. So I guess, what attracted you to wanting to be a promoter specifically in the wrestling business?
Well, a lot of it's not just wrestling. I like promoting. I will promote anything. Back in high school, I used to help my ex-girlfriend promote like Easter dances and things like that for the school. So my promoting and willingness to promote it goes beyond wrestling. Wrestling is just something I absolutely love. So I guess from a young perspective, since I was a young person, I really just tried to combine the two. And what I really loved what Vince McMahon had done over the years. And he gets a lot of flack these days, and that might be an age thing now where things kind of pass him by. But back in the day, he did a lot of things to forward the industry. His promotional skills were so good, and he was so good at everything. That I was really intrigued about, how does this all get put together? How can I do this here locally and make money? I want to have my own ring. I want to have my own wrestlers. I want to have it build up a territory. And when I seen these guys already doing it, I thought, this might be a good way to learn something. So that's kind of like how I gravitated towards it a little bit.
And so you mentioned that you started out back in the 90s. So how did you go from, I guess, being a part of those other promotions to finally saying, you know what, I'm going to give this a shot. I'm going to try to start up my own promotion, and then NEW was born. How'd you decide to make that jump?
Well, everybody has their own vision, right? So, I mean, at some point, you have goals in mind, and sometimes those goals don't mesh up with the people who are running their own company. And lots of times, wrestling is not perfect, especially in the independent scene. There's a lot of promoters out there who, for lack of a better term, don't know what they're doing in all aspects. And I'm one of them to a degree. We're all learning. We always continue to learn and grow. But there's a lot of promoters here who, not that they weren't helpful, but they were kind of stuck in their own way. They lack certain things. And when you look at that and you see other people doing things that are being successful, you're like, okay, I want some of that. So when I see promotions outside of the industry in Newfoundland getting success in other areas, like financially, like they're doing bigger shows, like they're bringing in other talent, and they're making real money at it. And the opportunity is there for younger guys to get better. That's something that I really want to do here. So when I was with Cutting Edge Wrestling during its relaunch, I actually defaulted into a promoter position based on how that company was ran, because a lot of the people who were running it at the time either weren't able to commit to the things they were doing or didn't want to do it. I don't really know the exact reasons, but long story short, I ended up being a default promoter unintentionally, which I didn't mind because that's what I set out to do in the first place. But it just got to the point where it wasn't my own company, but I was putting my own money into it, and things were kind of going awry, and I had questions and concerns about my finances. So after spending a number of years with Cutting Edge Wrestling, I decided to launch my own company in 2015. Ironically, I'm still involved with Cutting Edge Wrestling, and I still promote a lot of their shows. So I'm kind of doing both, but I guess I needed to get my own respect in the wrestling industry and put my own feet on the ground, so to speak. So that's the path that I took, hence why New Evolution Wrestling is now the top commodity here in Newfoundland. And I set out to do some of the things and have done them. I brought in good talent from away, and we've made some money, and our attendance has been never better outside of COVID, of course.
And we're going to touch a little bit more on the success of New Evolution Wrestling coming up in a little bit. We have about a minute now before we have to go to our first break of the day. But Cameron, I'll throw back to you before we do that. Who are some of your big influences growing up watching wrestling?
Oh man, you could have me here all day with that. Between the likes of Jeff Hardy, who always taught me no matter how bad you screw up, there's always another day. There's the likes of Mick Foley, who was able to teach me that you don't have to be exactly what everybody wants you to be in order to make something of yourself. You can get there by being yourself, and those are two of the main guys that I was majorly inspired by. I absolutely loved their work, and as a kid, when I had some rough days, they were some guys who were able to help me get through.
Awesome. We're talking the local pro wrestling scene in Newfoundland and Labrador with Cameron and Travis here on Target. We're gonna go to our first break of the day, and when we come back here on the program, we're going to talk a little bit about the growth of New Evolution Wrestling, because it really exploded in popularity within its first year, which is really remarkable, I think. So we're going to talk about that coming up next on Target.
Join Brian Medore weekdays at noon for a comprehensive update on news from every corner on all levels, newsmakers, weather, and more. Join us on your VOCM at noon.
And we're back on Target St. John's. I'm Richard Duggan, filling in for Linda Swain, and today we're talking about the local pro wrestling industry. We have promoter Travis Canning and pro wrestler Cameron Stevens on the line. Now, before the break, we just touched on how New Evolution Wrestling really became quite a success in a very short amount of time. Travis, NEW really took off in popularity. So talk a little bit about, I guess, the evolution of that success from the first show, I guess, leading up to now.
I think for us, a lot of the stars aligned at the time because there was an existing promotion prior to, obviously, Cutting Edge Wrestling was there, but there was another promotion, Legend City Wrestling, who had an abundance of talent. But unfortunately, the management, at least in the last couple of years, or the ownership of that company, went, a different direction, and it wasn't a good one. So there was a lot of extra talent lying around that had been getting some experience with a lot of guys from away, and combination with us with Cutting Edge Wrestling, bringing in guys like Tommy Dreamer and things like that, and working with the locals here and doing some training with Cutting Edge Wrestling. So what I actually ended up having was this neat little framework of the best of the local crop of New Evolution Wrestling on both sides of the industry here that had never really existed before. There was always like a line drawn in the sand. Wrestling can be very territorial, and so there was always people on different sides of the fence. And so when I had everybody on the one roof, the stars really aligned, and then the other two companies just kind of Cutting Edge Wrestling didn't disappear, what LCW did, but they kind of took a back burner. And I was bringing in a lot of guys from LA, especially WWE wrestlers, that were also getting attention. So the hype with the fresh matchups and combined with the WWE talent that I was bringing in and the Ring of Honor talents and things of that nature really caused us to explode. We got some extra media attention, a lot of free press, and it really helped us out quite a lot. Plus the rigorous promoting. I've been promoting for quite some time prior to NEW, and I think it went a little bit under the radar. So I think my hard work just started to pay off at the right time. So it was almost like lightning in a bottle. Everything just like aligned at once.
And as a businessman and as a promoter, obviously you want to see your promotion grow as big as it possibly can. But did you ever think in your wildest dreams that it would grow to be so big so fast?
I didn't think it was going to be as big as fast as it was. I knew I could get it to where it has been and where it is. Did I think it was going to happen right away? No. I think I had a lot of help along the way, a lot of good connections that made that happen. We ended up getting on TV with Rogers and NTV and Eastlink and things like that, which didn't hurt. No, I didn't think it was going to happen right away, but I'm very confident as a promoter that I could have gotten it there over time. Just for it to happen almost in like a month or two from our first show and just have it explode the way it did, no, that was definitely unheard of, unprecedented. There was no prerequisite for it, none, zero.
Now, I'll go back to you now, Cameron. As I understand, you're currently wrestling here in the province, but you've wrestled all over the place. Tell me about some of the places where you've wrestled and how that has sort of influenced your style in the ring.
So that's a great question, actually. So Newfoundland is actually where I was born, where where I was created and everything. But I left very early on, really early on in life. So most of my growing up and becoming an adult took place up away. So by the time I got to Newfoundland, it was actually the 5th province I had wrestled in. I had gotten my start in Alberta with, obviously with Bruce Hart through Hart Brothers University, and my first match was with Real Canadian Wrestling out there in Calgary. And from that point on, I was pretty regular with RCW, had some appearances in Saskatchewan and BC and Manitoba, but mainly stayed in Alberta. Realistically, once I came out here, I was able to, through spending a lot of time with the likes of Travis while he was promoting out around the province, I was able to learn how to promote myself, if that makes sense. So before I came out here, I was a very shy, not so open person, but through the help of actually being out here and almost jumping into it with both feet, if that makes sense, I was able to pick up that skill, and hopefully we're able to continue growing on that, and we'll be able to have not just myself being able to grow on that, but our other roster members as well.
And I want to touch on that for a second, because something that maybe people who don't necessarily follow pro wrestling might not understand is that when you're first starting out and you're wrestling on the independent circuit, as it's called, the onus is really on the wrestler to build that character and to build that presence that will carry you and help get you booked in other promotions. So, and Travis, I guess you can speak to this too, but how important is it for you to put that focus on self-promotion in order to become successful in the pro wrestling business?
Oh, I can't speak enough volumes about it. It's independent for a reason. There's really no contracts outside of day of bookings, and the reality is every independent promotion is running on a shoestring budget. That's the reality. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors, and people will say otherwise. But the truth is, the infrastructure is not there for a lot of company-wide promoting of the product. As a whole, like, we do our best, but it's really on the individual wrestlers, because every single promotion could be gone tomorrow, and your brand is your entity. So if you're going to be in the wrestling business, you really need to drive that home and create, this is who I am, this is what I do, these are my matches, this is what I can offer to promoters, this is what I can offer to fans in your area. These are the other things that I can offer. I do graphic work on the side. I do this on the side. This is how I communicate. So putting yourself out there and offering yourself up to other promoters and other promotions in any way possible is an absolute must on an indie level, because you can't just rely on wrestling and talking well. Those things are great, but if you're not able to have a platform to showcase it, it doesn't mean much. So you need to be able to brand yourself accordingly.
So, Travis, it really takes all hands on deck to make it work.
It absolutely does. I mean, I could talk about how I promote all day, but the reality of it, if I didn't have the other people around me, I have a very good support system, and I'll be the first person to admit that at times when things are frustrating, I don't really give people that benefit of letting them know that, and maybe I should more. But like the reality of it is, I wouldn't be able to do anything I'm doing without the people I have involved, and that's 1,000%. I'm talking the venues giving me a good platform and working with me. I'm talking about some of the people on the inside who give me a really great deal on graphics for little or next to no money, just because they're passionate about what they're doing, and connections to getting on TV and having the support of like NTV and Rogers and all these other entities, and support from people like yourselves who are giving us the opportunity here today to come out and talk about this and just plug everything we're doing. I couldn't do it without any of these guys. Like, you know what I mean? So in reality, it's not a one-person show. It's an entity in and of itself. We all work together.
You're listening to On Target St. John's. We're talking about the local pro wrestling scene with Travis Canning and Cameron Stevens. We're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, the COVID-19 pandemic has touched all areas, including the pro wrestling scene. So we're going to talk with Travis and Cameron about how the pandemic has affected the wrestling business and the effects that has had up to this day. So we're going to talk about that coming up next. Don't go away.
Saturday morning, join us for the Irish Newfoundland Show. Send your request to irishnl@vocm.com or submit them online at vocm.com.
And welcome back to On Target. I'm Richard Duggan, filling in for Linda Swain. We're talking the local pro wrestling business. We have Travis Canning on the line. He is a promoter. He owns New Evolution Wrestling. And we have Cameron Stevens on the line. He is a pro wrestler. And as we mentioned before the break, the COVID-19 pandemic has touched all businesses, all areas of life for the last year and a half, including the pro wrestling industry. So, Travis, I'll start with you. As a promoter, it brought your business to, I guess, a halt in terms of live shows. So how did the COVID-19 pandemic affect New Evolution Wrestling?
Very badly in the beginning. I had a island-wide tour. We were promoting between here and I'm going to say Corner Brook. So we had shows all lined up, plus a couple of shows in between that time that were on the books. And we ended up having to shut down everything in the middle of all our promotional costs to the tune of, I'm going to say we lost probably $3-4 grand in combination of promotional costs and money that was on the books for those shows. So it definitely hit us hard financially. Also, the other thing it did is, we have a lot of trouble in terms of being in the ring here as it is. There's no formal school here. So, a lot of the guys who would rely on us setting up the ring in certain places and venues to do some training and to practice and go over matches were not able to do it for a long time until restrictions and things like that got eased. So in the beginning, it was a little bit of a headache, but the light at the end of the tunnel is here in Newfoundland. We haven't been stricken with it as bad as other areas. For the last year and a half, a lot of that time, we were and are running live events under a very strict capacity, but it's been a bit of a headache and a nuisance to do it, but we're doing it because we want to have the content out there. The guys want to be in the ring. We want to give back to the fans. The money is really not there, if I'm being honest. We're breaking even or maybe even losing $100 or $200 on a show, but the end reward is we have all that content, and we're very lucky. We've been the only promotion running consistently in Canada for the past year and a half. So in retrospect, we've gotten a lot more online attention because of that, because a lot of the people who were running in Canada were shut down. We were getting attention from Alberta, Ontario, the Maritimes, all these other places watching what we were doing. So we managed to flip into doing something really cool and taking something that was a complete negative and turning it into a positive. But the biggest thing is obviously the attendance was not there, where most of our venues were stuck between 80 and 100 people tops. That's the max. And that's changing now slowly for certain venues depending on social distancing, but we are still struggling with it.
And Cameron, for you, I'm no athlete. I have about the athletic ability of a boulder, but one thing I would know about pro wrestling training is that you have to wrestle to stay in wrestling shape, right? So for you with the shutdown, for the most part, you're not getting in the ring. So how are you able to, I guess, stay sharp for wrestling when you can't actually wrestle?
Phenomenal question. So on my end of things, to be perfectly honest, the inability to get in the ring as often as I am accustomed to realistically was kind of there when I came here in the first place anyway, because where I was up away before, we would have shows 2-3 a week, whereas out here it's more so maybe 1-2 a month, which it creates the marketplace for the people to be able to actually get very excited to see the show at the end of the month, or like they're waiting X amount of days and then they get to see it. That's super exciting. So having my ring time cut back was actually kind of something I was used to. But when it got cut back from, okay, you'll get in the ring a couple times a month, and now you'll get in it maybe once every 3-4. And it was like, oh shoot, like this is not a fun not a fun experience. But luckily I was able to use a lot of my time to keep up to date, try to educate myself on some of the other areas of the industry, such as the self-promotion, the graphics work, stuff like that. Since the pandemic hit, it's been nonstop, just doing everything I can to get eyes on NEW, myself, and what we're doing. There's a lot of unseen effort being put in, not just on the company's end, but mine as well.
And you mentioned there that you were able to focus on the other aspects of the business during that downtime. And I think that might be a fact that, again, for people who are looking in from the outside, who maybe don't follow wrestling, maybe wouldn't really think of, but as a pro wrestler, you're not just an athlete, right?
No, not even a little bit.
You got to be good at talking for doing promos. You have to have this whole, I guess, collection of skill sets to make it really work.
I always use the phrase making connections, and I may have actually bit that off of Travis there, but I always stick to making connections. If you make a connection with somebody, then they care about you. Make the people care about you. Tell them why they should care about you. Show them why. You know what I mean? And that's a big part of what I've been doing. Over the pandemic, I've started my own podcast, which is actually about inspirations. It's called Inspired, and between that, I've overloaded my pro wrestling tees store. I think I got like 32 shirts on there now. My YouTube has been kept up to date, just uploading music videos, like full matches, stuff like that. The podcast video version gets uploaded on there. So I've been trying to stay busy as much as I can. Obviously, whenever there's an opportunity to get in the ring, I'm jumping at it. It's something as soon as we're able to get in the ring on a regular basis full time, then everything's back to normal.
And I'll ask the both of you this question because now things are kind of starting to get back to normal. Travis, what was it like for you to put off that first post-pandemic show and actually see fans in the seats again?
It was very exciting. It was a weight off my shoulders. And it was weird because I felt a lift throughout the course of the first real show we did. We did do an outdoor show, which was great. We did that last August, but November is when we really did our first show back at like our main venue, the CLB Armory. We had 80 people there, and the 80 people were so excited that it felt like the 400 or 500 we normally have. And I went out to the ring and welcomed everybody back, and it was just such a feel-good moment. But for me, I was still a nervous wreck because when you're dealing with the pandemic and trying to follow through on all these restrictions, and there's like I said to you earlier, there's no prerequisite really new. And so my nervousness, I could feel it alleviated as the show came to a close, and the weight kind of came off my shoulders, and it was like it gave me a sense of accomplishment that yes, we can pull our stuff together. We're adaptable. We can make this work. We have our fans. We have our wrestlers. We have people who believe in us, and it was a really, really good feeling at the end of that show. Like, I can't describe it. I could have cried. I could have.
Cameron, what about you? What was it like the first time getting in the ring and after the initial wave of the pandemic?
Oh man, it felt like $1,000,000. And to speak to Travis, brother, could have cried or did shed a tear, because I remember you being very, very excited about that show. But yeah, man, I was very, very thankful to be able to work in front of our audience again. It's something that this job is very difficult without our audience. It's almost impossible, because a big part of what we do is we feed off of them. When they're telling us that they're loving what we're doing, it helps us know how to go forward from that point on. You know what I mean? And like, when the shows came back and the people started coming back, sure, we didn't have our regular crowds, because with the restrictions, we weren't able to get our regular crowds. But the shows sold out. They sold out fast, which told us this show is a commodity. This is a hot ticket. This is something people need to come see. And the people are seeing that now, that this is something they need to come see, go out of their way to check out. Because when they came to the show, they were excited. They got their tickets nice and early. When they showed up, they made sure that they were loud. They reacted to most of the things that we were doing. And it was just a huge weight lifted off of us, being like, well, when are we going to come back? When is this going to happen again? Because especially here, a lot of it was left up in the air, because especially where obviously NEW is the only company in the province, we didn't really have any ability to, okay, well, NEW shut down for the time being. Let's see if the other spot's open. That wasn't really there, right? So when we were able to come back to shows, and it was as one big group, and we showed everybody what we were capable of. If I'm not mistaken, it was Another New Beginning was the name of the show. And I had one of my favorite matches if not my favorite match from last year of my own, with the young stallion Shannon Shaw. And a super, super great feeling to be in front of our audience again. And it just gets better and better every single time we go back, because the more we're being around our audience, the more we're being around our people, the people that love us and help us be better people. It's the better for them, the better for us. We absolutely love being around them, and thankfully we'll be able to keep doing it now moving forward.
On Target St. John's, we're talking about the local pro wrestling industry with Travis Canning and Cameron Stevens. We have to take our final break of the day, but we'll be right back.
Weekday mornings from 5:30 to 9. Jumpstart your day with Jerry Lynn Mackey and Ben Murphy. Newsmakers, traffic, weather, and more during your VOCM morning show.
All right, and we're back on Target St. John's. I'm Richard Duggan, filling in for Linda Swain today. Linda's off on vacation, and today we're talking about the local pro wrestling industry. We have Travis Canning on the line. We have Cameron Stevens on the line. And Travis, and I guess Cameron, I guess you can both really answer this one. How do you think the pandemic in the last year and a half has changed the pro wrestling industry?
I think it forced people to pay more attention to other aspects of the industry. You were talking about earlier about there's the physical wrestling aspect, but a lot of the wrestling community had to get really creative from top to bottom. WWE had no fans for almost a year, so they had to find a way to counteract that. A lot of other companies did their own version of that and managed to target their audience in a different way to be adaptable. It definitely got a lot of people out of our comfort zones and helped us grow as human beings, which I think is way better for the product. When you're doing something the same way for a very long time and nothing is there to help you change, you get very comfortable, get stagnant, or whatever you want to call that word, stale, even sometimes in some capacity. So it was definitely a bit of a shock to the system. And I think in some ways, and don't get me wrong, I'm not thankful for a pandemic by any stretch, but what came out of it was definitely a positive. It helped us grow and make us stronger. We managed to put together some cinematic matches. WWE done that on a much better scale than we did, but it was just our way of keeping ourselves out there, focusing on social media, and trying to do things to almost counterbalance what we were missing. And I think we keep all of that going forward, but we still have what we had post-pandemic, pre-pandemic, and we're stronger for it.
Cameron, Travis just mentioned watching some of the international companies like the WWE, the AEW. It was really remarkable for me watching how they almost never missed a beat in terms of TV. Like one week there were fans, the next week, for example, WWE was down at the Performance Center, and they had the wrestlers were wrestling in front of nobody, no fans. There was none of that live reaction. But what was it like for you just watching how the industry was evolving during that time?
It was rough, man. I'll be honest. Like, a lot of what I started watching in the pandemic, obviously I kept up to date with what was going on, but the majority of what I was going out of my way to watch was older stuff, because it's one of those, there's only so much wrestling without crowds you can watch before it just starts to hurt the soul. You know what I mean? Like, there's only so many, like, I'll use a superplex as an example. There's only so many superplexes with no reactions you can see before you're just like,
It was definitely surreal watching, for example, the main event of WrestleMania. It was Drew McIntyre won the WWE title there was no reaction. You could hear a pin drop, right? And it was just, there's something so surreal about that, especially now watching it back now, right?
Absolutely. And, like, a big part of what I was going out of my way to try to find during that time was basically trying to find some of the programs that were doing the no fans extremely well. I think the greatest promotion to do that during the pandemic was Ring of Honor, where they didn't have the people, like, in there watching, but the program was almost changed around a bit, so the people didn't have to be there in order for the program to still look good and work. You know what I mean? Whereas it felt like other promotions, it was just kind of same old, it's just there's no people.
And now, Travis, I want to go back to you for a moment, moving a little bit away from the pandemic, because one of the things that I thought was really neat about NEW was, I guess, some of the more unique events that you put off. Like, for example, I remember you did shows during the intermission at St. John's Edge Games, for example. And recently you did a show down at a brewery, right? So, like, how important is that creativity, and how are those events received?
They're extremely important. The reception to all of these events, the different types of events we're doing, including the outdoor one. We have another one, our second one, coming up at Catamaran Park in a couple of weeks on August 14th. So I think all these things that we're doing, we're reaching a different audience. It helps us create our fan base and build on our fan base. So, being with the St. John's Edge, I can't speak enough about that, because there's a lot of people that probably don't even know that Newfoundland or local independent wrestling exists here. They'll go home and they'll watch wrestling on TV, but they probably don't really think, hey, there's this wrestling promotion here. And I almost see New Evolution Wrestling as like the Great Big Sea, what Great Big Sea is to music in Newfoundland. I think New Evolution Wrestling is to wrestling in Newfoundland. Like, this is our brand. This is us. This is what identifies us. This is who we are. And I think being a part of like a local culture, because the Edge had that mindset too of like, this is a local brand. Yes, some of the people are from away, but like they centered it around people like Carl English and things like that, like real homegrown culture, and that's what I wanted to tap into when I associated myself with that, because I thought NEW, we need some of that, because that's really what we are too. The entities are different, but the culture is similar, even though the Edge was obviously a big brand, and I really hope they work something out, because they're a real commodity, not just for us, but just for the entire core of the entertainment spectrum here in the province.
And now we got a few minutes left. So, Travis, where does NEW go from here? What's next?
For us, we keep just branching out and building our name. And we just got another brewery show signed, literally before I came out the year. So I'll drop that one. It's October 16th. There's no graphic or anything announced. We just put up the event page on social media. But there's that. We also are going to be looking to build towards getting other members of our roster back at some point. The ones that are from outside the province, like Tyson Dukes and Danny Duggan, and we're going to try to bring in people from other areas of the country and try to build this back up to where it was in terms of roster. The other thing is we have a lot of really talented individuals that are now getting the opportunity to perfect their craft on this platform. So we, in a sense, are in a hybrid rebuild mode. Some of our veterans are there, and we're using a lot of our young guys now that are getting the opportunity that they never had before. And a lot of this is because people like Tyson Dukes were not there. So a lot of the people that were involved in training with Tyson Dukes, like Shannon Shaw, the things of that nature, were getting the opportunity to go out and show their own talent. So again, I think I have the opportunity to move forward and have a roster that's better coming out of this situation, because we have a lot more talent to work with, and we can always bring back the people we had before.
And Cameron, I'll ask you the same question. What's next for you, and what are some of your goals moving forward?
Well, there's a lot of things on my plate. So between the NEW commitments I have, I've also got some commitments up away, working with the Alberta Wrestling Academy and Can-Am Wrestling out in Alberta. Actually, they're looking to recreate the territory system of old, which NEW is actually a part of. But yeah, man, just keeping on growing, improving, and just getting better day by day is realistically the goal, not just for the in-ring and professional side of my life, but the personal one as well. But for anyone who wants to check out any of that progress, the progress for New Evolution Wrestling can be found easily at Linktree, linktr.ee/New Evolution Wrestling. And if you use that same Linktree start and at the slash put TSP Cameron Stevens, you'll find everything that I do. So Linktree/TSP Cameron Stevens, Linktree/New Evolution Wrestling to find everything that we got coming up. And there is a lot in store coming up between the New Evolution Wrestling shows, the working with other promotions across the globe, with the social media presence, whether it's my own or NEW's. There's a lot of stuff to keep up to date with. There's a lot of stuff for anybody who's interested to check out. And just hopefully we'll be able to see more people in the stands sooner than later, and get our people back.
Excellent. Cameron Stevens, Travis Canning, thank you guys so much for coming on the program with me today. And I just realized that pro wrestling themed show, I missed a golden opportunity throughout this entire program to call myself Hacksaw Richard Duggan. But anyway.
Tremendous.
All right. Thank you guys so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime.
All right, that was Travis Canning, Cameron Stevens, talking about the local pro wrestling industry. I'm Richard Duggan, and filling in for Linda Swain on today's edition of On Target. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk soon. Have a great day.